Councillor Mullone. Do you have a supplementary to the response you've been given?
I thank the councillor for his response. It sadly was more flannel than we had in the 1970s. It was a long time ago now, so I'll remind members of that the planning meeting of January 21st, 2020 was rather a contentious one, and after a while a planning advisory service group was charged with investigating irregularities within it. It returned a verdict of nothing to see, though almost all our concerns were unaddressed. Chief among these was our frustration that in a massive decision that turned on the chairman's casting vote...
Can I just interrupt, Councillor Mullone? Can I ask you not to handle the microphone if that's possible?
Well, otherwise I'm not speaking into it properly, am I?
Just get the boom, the gentleman to hold the boom in front of you if that's possible.
Yeah, it's being stuck into my nose, which is uncomfortable, so I'll just hold it like this if that's all right with you. The 2 speaking slots against development were allocated not to concerned locals or their advocates, but to persons unknown who have since become known as the Ghost Objectors, and who have always been kept secret from us and the public. My supplementary question hinges on this. We know who the objectors were, we always knew, but it took 18 months to gather the evidence and the documents. The first objector slot was given to a 23-year-old male described by a former employer as having learning difficulties, who is on record as saying that he was encouraged to write a letter of objection by a friend of his mother, a person who worked for TDC in the planning department. The letter was received before the application was even validated and was selected by TDC from the 100 or so received. He was a farm labourer whose previous employer was one Anthony Rue, the farmer and chief landowner of the NA3 development. The letter he wrote was a poetic entreaty. He did not object on planning grounds. It was not an objection that was admissible under TDC guidelines. He does not live in Teignbridge, but on a still under construction development in Paynton, in a family house that was entirely owned by Linden Homes. Prior to the planning meeting, he was telephoned by a council officer in Ford House who solicited him to be a speaking objector, along with his brother, a second objector, even though his brother had made no objection, written no letter, and had no interest in the issue. Thus were these spots, so precious to the other side of the argument, filled by TDC. It appears neither of them, contrary to what we were told, suffered a bereavement on the morning of the January 21st that prevented them coming. They simply didn't come. We have asked many times for full disclosure on the Ghost Objectors and have been advised that the withholding of this information under GDPR is a misrepresentation of what GDPR is for. We asked the executive member for planning to be honest with us several times under Part 2 conditions. We got silence. We have exhausted every official, polite, courteous and reasonable avenue and got nothing but obstruction and contempt. So now this is happening. Due to this straw manning, Abbots Kerswell Parish Council and the Walborough Residents Association were unable to bring their expert from Oxford to put forward a scholarly environmental case for the planning committee to hear. The speaking slots were knowingly misallocated by TDC officers breaching their own rules in a deliberate attempt to disadvantage the case against adoption of the proposal. The planning committee was lied to. The leadership of this council has committed, at the very least, conspiracy to defraud the... Can
I ask you, Councillor Mullone,
by the willful and deliberate prejudicing...
Is there going to be a question, please?
You are in contempt of the law and in contempt of the people. So can the chairman...
Can you please sit down, Councillor Mullone?
How much
please, Councillor Mullone, can you sit down, please?
NSN executive involved? How much rot has set in?
Can you
so
please
you
sit
can get a
down?
slight
And
advantage over people who try to stand up for their environment?
Please.
No, you can sit down, you paper nonsense.
I think we're going to adjourn. Please, we're going to adjourn.
You will be charged with assault.
Chairman,
By
if
supplementary
Councillor Mullone would like to
questions.
provide the evidence that seemingly me and my colleagues have never seen or heard.
I'm not sure it's appropriate to be filming this.
Yeah, it's a public meeting. I can film it, yes.
We're adjourning the meeting. We're adjourning the meeting.
Can you keep the council under control?
We're going to start live streaming again in just a second. And a supplementary to your third question, Councillor Daws.
Yes, my third question was whether the conflicts of interest were outlined in relation to the Planning Advisory Service investigation into the Langford Bridge investigation. The answer to the question is that the chair of the planning committee did declare that he'd worked for the planning advisory service at the meeting where the council committed to invite the planning advisory service in. So that's one declaration of many meetings. In the single call that we had with the planning advisory service, it became quickly apparent that the officer in charge of the investigation, Richard Crawley, had a professional working relationship with the chair of planning under investigation. It would have been wholly proper due process that was declared throughout the investigation. Members have been consistently hoodwinked and treated with contempt. Members have voted in good faith by the representatives to make decisions and offer scrutiny. The Planning Advisory Service failed to address the 7 huge concerns against the planning decision for Langford Bridge, and in doing so may well have conspired to defraud the residents of Teignbridge and their failures to follow due process in investigating this meeting. The leadership of this council has committed, at the very least, conspiracy to defraud the residents of Teignbridge by willfully and deliberately prejudicing an open and fair planning meeting.
Have you got a question, a direct question, Councillor
Yes, I have.
Daws?
Can the chair of planning committee offer an explanation as to why he didn't declare his professional working relationship with the lead investigating officer at any junction throughout the council meetings of the investigation into Langford Bridge?
Councillor Taylor?
It's a question, thank you, Chair. It's a question for members regarding declaring an interest, and that's not something that I can comment on, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Right. Questions have come from the portfolio holder, and that is where we end this matter.